Welcome to the Geek Cabal channel. I'm Bob,
I'm Jim.
and you're about to watch a clip from one of our longer podcast videos since they've been running about an hour and a half, 2 hours. We splice clips out. If you like the whole thing, it'll be linked to in the description. Hopefully, you'll watch it too. It's up to you, though. And since this is YouTube, you know how it goes. If you like what you like here, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. But otherwise, hope you enjoy the clip. So, I was listening to something earlier today, kind of talking about Robert Kirkman, who, for those of you who don't know that name, he is the gentleman who writes The Walking Dead and Invincible, both of which have become very successful properties in the video front. The Walking Dead ended up having, I don't know, like 11 seasons, and has thus far had two spin offs. And then Invincible has one season on Amazon with definitely another one on the way. And is talking about him quite a bit, and I found that interesting. But it was something that they said at one point that kind of sparked what I'm about to talk about. Uh, he mentioned that he preferred the freedom of writing his own books versus being bound to the not just the continuity of Marvel and DC books, because he did briefly also work for Marvel. He works for Image now. Well, actually, I think he's part owner of Image now, if the story was correct. He was the first creator that wasn't there at the founding that they said, "Hey, want to come aboard as one of the owners." And it was Todd McFarlane that was like, as Todd McFarlane is basically the heavyweight there.
Yeah.
And it was actually quite a ways into publishing one of those two books that he before he even met Todd McFarlane. So he got there, and Todd, he's at a show and asked him, "Would you quit working for Marvel and DC?" And he's like, "Why would I do that?" He goes, "So you can be one of the owners of Image." And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And so one of the things he didn't like, if I understood it correctly, is that Marvel and DC have this little problem of they have to continually reset to the status quo, or at least they feel like they do. I personally don't think they do, but they feel like they do, and that's a problem. And it's not a barrier to entry to comics. They actually do it so it's easier to read comics, but it makes it for a lot of people that do end up reading them, they quit eventually because they feel like there's no stakes. Because people don't stay dead and things like that. And except for Uncle Ben, used to be Uncle Ben and Bucky, but then someone came up with a dynamite story to bring Bucky back as the Winter Soldier, and well, now it's just Uncle Ben. So
What?
that's a problem, because the characters can't, they can only grow so much, and that's from a narrative perspective, that's a problem.
Yeah, but I mean, it makes sense to a point because if you killed Spider-Man off, I'm pretty sure there's gonna be some upset children
Oh,
that'll.
sure. Yeah, okay, like Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, some random sampling of the X-Men, like sure. We know they're probably not ever really going to die. Or if they do, they're going to come back. But it's more like, Spider-Man killed off Gwen Stacy and she is still dead in the 616 universe, like has been for quite a while. Hell, Norman Osborn was dead like two issues, one issue later, and he stayed dead until the Clone Saga, the very end of the Clone Saga. So, like, I mean, these characters, they can't, like, people always joke about Jean Grey coming back to life. Her most recent death, I think she was dead for nearly 20 years in real time. Like, I think that's to the point that we can stop joking about her constantly coming back to life.
I think Barry Allen was like 15 or 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, like characters can stay dead for a long time in comics. It's just to your point, though. It's not going to be Spider-Man. Well, no, it's not going to be.
Yeah.
But it can be people around Spider-Man. It can be some of his villains. You can keep them dead for a long time, and then it's impactful when they do come back.
Like I said,
You know,
and normally they do it if they're gonna kill off a hero, they're gonna do it with you know uh, a side character or one that's not as popular. One that comes to mind is Ted Cord.
man. Why you got to be talking about Ted Cord like that, Jim? He was awesome. He did not deserve to be shot by
No, he. I'm
Maxwell
not.
Lord.
I'm not saying.
Maxwell Lord is an asshole.
I'm not saying that he did deserve, and I'm not saying that it wasn't a good character because from what I've gathered, the Blue Beetle and Booster Gold comic was actually pretty decent.
Given to understand it was.
And I think there is actually at least one point in time where Booster Gold goes back in time and saves, or goes to try to save him, but then Ted Cord kind of goes, "No, this is what it's supposed to happen."
I couldn't tell you about that for sure, but I can tell you that in the aftermath of that, because that was like the very beginning of Infinite Crisis, is right around when, like, the build up to Infinite Crisis when that happens. And it's like one of the saddest things ever whenever he goes to the Justice League and tries to get any of them to give a damn about it. And like Batman just blows him off like he's a chump. You know, Superman, if I recall correctly, like we're too busy. Wonder Woman's the only one who's like, no, Booster, like, Ted was one of us. Like, we're gonna find who did this. And she does. And she snaps his neck. Like she kills him, like literally spins
Yeah.
his head around.
Oh yeah, and it was all recorded for everyone to
Yeah.
see, and everybody's just like, "Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it had some fallout, but like it was just like so tragic. You're just sitting there like I know Booster Gold's a goof off, but like Ted Cord like contributed.
yeah."
Like the fact the rest of them were just like, yeah, fuck Ted. It's like, hold on here. Like he was one of you guys.
Uh,
I know you aren't the Avengers, but damn it, avenge him.
yeah, one of the worst, I say worst for most people storylines is where Booster Gold goes back in time to save Bruce Wayne's parents from dying, and that turns into a terrible time for everybody because um, Batman does not exist. It's just Bruce Wayne, the spoiled whatever,
Yeah. As soon as
and
like Lex Luthor 2.0, but
yeah,
like not a villain, hopefully.
well, and Selena Kyle is actually insane. She actually thinks she's a cat.
Sure.
Uh, so yeah, it's an interesting. I believe it's called The Gift. I think I'd have to see if I could find that. Or I mean I watched the video on it because I don't. The only comics I have is a stack of comics that my dad gave me that were all like 12 cents each, on the tag. At some point, we need to go through some of those and just talk about them because that's back when the covers usually had nothing to do with what's actually inside the.
Yeah, there's a whole era of DC comics like that with largely Superman covers, or Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. And there's a whole website, at least there used to be, called superdickery.com because Superman was a super dick to everybody on those covers. Like, there's one where he's like heat visioning his way into the Batcave, and Batman's like, "Superman, what are you doing?" There's a whole bunch of reporters, but he's like, "Let me show you let me show you Batman's true identity." There's one where Superman and Batman are having Robin and Jimmy Olsen dig their own graves, and Jimmy Olsen's like, "You're not going to kill me, are you, Superman?" He goes, "No, I'm not going to. Batman's going to shoot you guys, and Batman's got a Tommy gun." It's just like, or Lois is dressed up as a Mexican general, and Superman, she's ordering him to shoot Jimmy Olsen, who's like tied to a pole and blindfolded like he's going to be executed.
Well, I can say, and from what I gathered, he's even a bigger a hole to Lois.
Well, there's an issue where he is actually a colossal dictator in the book and not just on
Yeah.
the cover, where he basically like threatens her and harasses her and all kinds of things, like as a masked vigilante, just to make sure that she doesn't. I think it's so that she doesn't know who he is, or they won't tell people who he is. It's one of the two, and it's just like, gosh golly, there, Superman, you can tell you really love this woman.
Well,
Like threatening her with death if she'll talk, and at the end he's like, well, I guess she's not going to talk. All right, it's like, yeah,
well,
oh great, Superman, real moral, upstanding uh, role model you are there.
I seen one where it was it was I think they were in space or whatever, and he was like getting ready to rip her like tether or the
Well, that
line.
sounds about right. I know there are two separate covers where he seems to have declared himself ruler of the world, and apparently, as part of that, is wearing a giant Pope style hat. But yeah. Anyway, part of what I was going to get to here is that's one of the reasons why I like the like alternate universe stories, because they're allowed to have consequences. I mean, ultimately, there aren't consequences because they're not going to follow up on it. But within the story itself, they're allowed to kill characters willy nilly in alternate universe stuff. And so, you get, I think you get better stories that way. And it's, I don't know, I always thought it was kind of paradoxical. Like those stories wouldn't exist without the decades of continuity, and they wouldn't have the impact without the decades of continuity. But still feel like they're better stories. Like Superman Red Sun is an excellent Superman story, but it is ultimately an Elseworld story. Kingdom Come is an excellent story, largely a Superman story, also an Elseworld story. The Age of Apocalypse is an excellent X-Men story, but it's an alternate reality story. And so you get these more limited stories uh, where things are allowed to play out like you think they probably actually should. That's pretty
Um,
much all I was going to say on the. Oh
now,
no, no, sorry, it wasn't. Hang on, hold that thought, Jim. There actually is a Marvel book. There was one for Spider-Man, and there's a recent one for the Fantastic Four that actually does explore the concept of, well, what if time actually did matter to these characters? And so, like, Spider-Man's called Spider-Man Life Story. The first issue is in the '60s, then the '70s, and the '80s, and each one you see a chunk of Parker's life in each decade, and time is actually passing. So by the last issue, he's an old man, and like Miles Morales is there, and that one was really interesting because like the other things that were going on, because I think at the end of the first one, Flash Thompson gets drafted to go to Vietnam, and it's either in that one or the next one. You see that Captain America has turned against the U.S. military, and Stark's the one funneling all the weapons to the military. And Captain America is not so much fighting for the Viet Cong, but he's fighting to stop soldiers doing not so savory things to them. And then it's by the '80s and '90s you find out there was a civil war between the two of them, and I think they both got it. And as in like they were unalived. And you see like he interacts with Mister Fantastic at one point. You hear that he's like divorced the Invisible Woman and stuff, and it's very interesting. And so the next one is the Fantastic Four, and I haven't read it yet. I'm waiting for it to be in a collected format. But yeah, so I'm really hoping we see it with some of the other characters too. Particularly like Iron Man, the Avengers, and the X-Men probably. Do that for Wolverine, but you got to start in like the 1800s.
yeah, I'm trying to figure out. I seen in the news that Daniel Radcliffe is going to be in Deadpool 3 as a secret role, and some people are speculating that he's going to be the MCU Wolverine.
Maybe.
The thing is he has the height.
Yeah,
Daniel Radcliffe is short.
yeah. For those of you who are not comic book fans, Wolverine's like 5 foot nothing in the comics. I think he's technically 5'3". But yeah, he's supposed to be very short.
He still wasn't the shortest on Alpha Flight. That would
Well,
be, that'd be
sure.
Puck.
When you have Puck on the team, like he throws the curve off a little bit. But yeah, no, Wolverine is supposed to be very short, and he has like a whole like complex about that too. That's why some people were like, "Man, who should play him in the movies? Bob Hoskins, because he's short and he doesn't look good." Like once you see him, you're like, "Yeah, I see why Gene picked Cyclops like all day, every day." Like, of course, Cyclops is like 6'2". It looks kind of like Tom Brady. Like, of course, it's like versus this short, ugly man who smokes cigars and drinks way too much and probably curses a lot.
and has a lot of questionable relationships regardless.
Yes, yes,
I guess, I mean, don't get me wrong. I get that he is, pretty much ageless for the most part. He doesn't age very much, so I don't expect him to be like, well, I got to find someone that's,
yeah,
200 years old. I
yeah.
mean,
I don't hold that against him because like I don't hold it against Apocalypse. He's 5,000 years old and has had God knows how many relationships, and not all with women. The Marvel clarified that just to be throw that out there. Which I mean, not to make a personal statement on the matter, but like I suppose if you're 5,000 years old and you're a shapeshifter, at some point you're gonna get curious. So
would you say bi-curious?
maybe.
Uh,
But
now,
yeah, like in the more recent issues, like he clearly had some kind of relationship with Richter, and presumably Richter was rocking his world though with those powers.
But no,
Oh, I shouldn't joke about that, but that's but yes, like older characters like that, yeah, it looks weird when he's like hanging out with Jubilee, and but I don't think there was ever any implication in
no.
here with Jubilee or Shadowcat. That was more of like a mentor type thing. But to your point, like he'd have to sleep with like Celine or somebody, and then she'd be the one robbing the cradle because she's older than Apocalypse. So
Uh,
actually, I'm pretty sure if she slept with Apocalypse, she'd still be robbing the cradle, given how much older she is. It's whenever you deal with characters that are millennia old, like they're not just gonna be like, well, I guess I'm celibate now. It's like, no, let's be real, that's not gonna happen.
yeah, but there should be at least a line that you draw, and I think sometimes Wolverine. There was definitely times where he's probably at least flirting with girls that were not of age, and in the
Yeah,
comics.
well,
And this kind of the scary part is that sometimes you have to think it's these comic book writers that are kind of living out.
people have definitely put forth the idea
Let me give me some more water.
that some of the things we see in comics is essentially these people's fantasies playing out. And to continue while Jim's gone here for a moment, you see that I see that criticism leveled a lot at Chris Claremont because there's definitely some interesting things that happen in the Claremont run, and I don't know if that's down to Chris Claremont or if that's down to like just the norms at the time. So it's hard to say.
Well, yeah, well, like the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver relationship.
That's from the Ultimates.
I
That's
know,
that's
but
where people were just like, "Hey, let's do all the wacky stuff we always kind of wanted to do." I guess over in Marvel in the 616, and it's like, well, why did you want to do that?
why are they playing Sweet Home Alabama?
Like, did you guys read like Game of Thrones and are like, "Hey, that's a really awesome idea"? Hell, that's seeped into BattleTech. There's at least one character, Denai, Laos, and Treya.
Well, I
Her
mean,
her parents are brother and sister.
don't get me wrong. I mean, that was like there's in
There were certain
European.
rulers that did that.
Yes, and there was obviously you know after so many generations were obviously signs of total
Well,
inbreeding.
that was cousins primarily.
Yeah.
Now the Egyptians, it was occasionally brother and sister. Uh, as far as the Ptolemaic dynasty, the one that the Cleopatra is from, which her actual name I believe is Cleopatra the Fourth, but she initially married her brother. So then she had a kid with Caesar. Then Caesar got killed by the Senate. Those backstabbing bastards.
Well, at least well,
Jokes on them. They did that to stop the rise of an emperor. Well, Augustus is like, nope, you just made it a different guy. Congratulations.